Welcome to the World Othello Championship 2017. In tonight's show you will meet some of the players who are here and will play the tournament. And we will, together with the game commentators, discuss who they think will be the World Othello Champion 2017. And together with me tonight I have Guy Plowman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tonight it was the reception of the World Othello Championship. It was, I think it was 80 players, 80, I don't remember really, but 94 players.
86.
86 players, good, from 26 countries. And the first round have now been paired, and it was, was it any interesting pairings for the first round?
There were some games which will be difficult that people wouldn't have wanted to get. For me, I thought the pick of the bunch is Matthias Berg versus Jackie Fu. Jackie is a very dangerous player, and Matthias is obviously one of the seeds. So I don't think Matthias would have been too happy with that.
Okay. Was it anything more you thought was interesting?
Another one that I thought was interesting was Maverick Lamb versus Brian Rose.
Oh.
Certainly one of the a previous world champion and someone who has improved dramatically in the last few years. I think that'll be a very, very good game too.
Yeah. It sounds interesting. The female on youth players, was it any interesting games there you have? No, I didn't think so. I thought that those rounds were all quite predictable in the main. Okay.
But obviously, those games will come in later rounds.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's 7 rounds tomorrow, and you can see them here on Live Othello. Now we will say welcome to Jeroen Everts. Jeroen will show us some things about the game Othello. What is Othello and how are you playing it? So, welcome Jeroen.
Thank you. Okay, this will be a bit hard. Othello will be played on a big green board. It's 8 times 8. You have discs which are black at one side and white at the other side. You have a starting position with 2 black discs and 2 white discs. And players take turning moves. So one player is black and the other player is white. When you put a black disc on the board, you have to flip every disc between the one you put on the board and the one who is already on the board. So if I put a disc here, I should flip the one in the middle. This is also for white. When you put a white disc on the board, you flip everything between a white disc which is already on the board and the one you put down on the board. A lot of players think it's the best strategy to take as much discs as possible in the beginning, but because the meaning of the game is to get as much discs as possible in the end. Because it's 64 squares, you need more than 32 to win. But the strategy of the most top players is not to get too much disc in the beginning, to minimize your opponent's moves and to steer the game in the way you want.
Okay, so what you're saying there is, as the game progresses, if you take too many pieces, then you lose some choice, and it's more important to have choice than lots of pieces because for the ending of the game.
Yes, because another important thing of the game is the corners. Once you have a corner, you can take it away because you can't put the piece outside of the board, so you will never be able to flip the corner. And if you have a lot of discs of your color on the board, I can try to show. Maybe like this. Now you see black only has a few moves. You can put that here, 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 and here. But white has a lot of different moves. And in this way you try to minimize your opponent's move to steer him to give you the corner.
Okay.
Well, that was the explanation.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Then I go. Bye.
Okay. So now we are going to have an interview with some players who are playing in this year's tournament but have also played for a very long time. And so they are going to join me and we're going to have a little chat about how Othello has evolved over the years. So I'd like to introduce you to Imre Lieder, to Carsten Feldberg, and to Brian Rose. Okay, can you put your microphones on, please? Yes, yours. No, no, okay, so Imre is from the UK. Brian is from the US, although he, I think you've represented Japan as well, haven't you?
Not at the World Championship.
Not at the World Championship. He lived in Japan for a good time. And Carsten is a Dane. So what I want to kind of get from you all is an impression of how you felt in your first World Championships and how it compares to now being older, some might say wiser, but also with the differences in the tournaments that have actually happened over the years. So Brian, what was the first year that you played in?
So I played in 1981, which was also held in Belgium.
Okay. And how did you feel the first time you played? How many players were there?
So there were 9 players.
Okay.
I think one of them just came at the last second, maybe worked for the toy company selling the game. So very few players. We played double round robin, so 16 games in 2 days. First day, 10 games. So you can imagine how tiring that was. I think the tournament organizers didn't have a good idea of how to run the tournaments, and things have progressed to an amazing extent over the years.
Okay, and Imre, which was your first tournament?
I'm much younger than Brian. My first one was 1983.
Okay, 2 years later. Okay, and how did you feel then?
I was very scared. I just met the American magazine Othello Quarterly, and there were all kinds of famous names in it, like Brian, for example. And so to meet people like that in the flesh was very exciting.
Okay, and how did you get on in that first tournament?
I ended up coming second, losing to Kenichi Ishii in the final.
Okay. You'll notice that Japanese names come up quite a lot, and that's because the depth of strength in Othello in Japan is very, very big. And they have a tradition of winning the World Championships, and it's a big celebration for Europeans if a European wins it for some reason and that kind of thing. Carsten, which was your first tournament?
Yeah, I was in the middle of those two. So my first year was 1982 in Stockholm, and it was also a very different experience from what it is today, because we were 11 players, and it was not like Brian said, where it was a double round robin. It was 2 groups playing each other, and people advancing to the semi-finals and finals.
Okay.
As far as I remember.
And how did you get on?
I ended up being 9 out of 11, so it was not my glory days. But I had a very close call on Kunihiko Tanida that ended up winning the World Championship, because I was 16 years old, had just learned the game, and I ended up having a 31-33 loss to him. And I actually threw the game away at move 56, so that was my first claim to fame.
Okay.
Almost beating the World Championship.
You've told me many such stories where you've thrown away. So how's it changed? So now we're here, and for the first time we've got this TV studio. We've got 86 players instead of 10. How is the feeling different when you come into a tournament and it's this big compared to one where, I mean, originally when it was 10 players, only 1 player from each country qualified, and now we have 3 players from each country, but it gives a much bigger experience. And obviously you can't say how you would have felt had you been 16 at the time that you played your first tournament in this tournament, or your first World Championships in this tournament. But how would you compare the feeling now to the feeling that you had back then?
So
Brian?
I think the thing is, when you go and there's only 9 people playing, it's a very easy. It's a very small group. You can all be friends. You obviously you know all the other players. You're talking to them all day, and you eat with them and at one table. So it's a very different feeling, and you at least I did. Stayed in touch with a lot of the people I played against in 1981 for a long time. Whereas the tournament now is so big. There's so many people that I don't know a lot of the players. I've never met them, or I've certainly never played a single game against a lot of the players. So it's just a much bigger field and much harder to prepare for, because you have so many players, so many strong players. Impossible to really study to try to do well against all of them.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed in the last decade, that when you don't know a player, the mindset has flipped from this is probably going to be an easy game to this is very probably going to be a difficult game when you've not heard of them before. And what do you think the reason for that is?
So the overall level of play is advanced dramatically, and I think the main reason is because of the advance of computers and also the internet. So back in the day, if you wanted to play someone who's really good at Othello, well, you had to go to Japan. That was your choice. You have to get on a plane and go to Japan to find the really strong players.
Is that why you lived there?
That's why I lived there. It's why I went there for the first time 30 years ago to play Othello, to find to play against the strong players. But now anyone anywhere in the world can just turn on the computer or use your phone, and you can play against extremely strong players or very strong computers. So it's helped to lift the entire strength of the field. So I finished in second place in 1981, but the way I played then, I would probably finish last place or almost last place if I was playing the same way as I did back then. Everyone just plays much better than they used to.
And Imre, I believe that in 1983, your first World Championships, Brian and Carsten were both also playing.
They were indeed, yes.
Yeah.
What was your first impressions of them?
I loved them. They were as fun to be with as they are now. Carsten, the preliminary round, and I knew his name. The other is, as Brian said, there are so many good players, so many really, not just meaning they've learned lots of openings, but they're able to be creative and be clever and turn a one position into a win. It used to be you could be losing and you'd be fine, you'd win in the end game, it's all fine. And now there are lots of players who you haven't heard of, who not only have excellent openings, but also have a pretty good mid-game and end-game as well. So that's completely new. So it used to be in the Worlds, if you lost a game, that's fine, you'll have 3 easy rounds after that. And now at the Worlds here, you can lose 4 games in a row and still find terrifying opponents, a former world champion or whatever, as your opponent.
And Carsten, Brian referred to the fact that in the early days you could all go to a tournament and sit around the same table and commune together. Do you find that the atmosphere remains even though you can't all sit around the table? Because I feel quite close to a number of people that I've never met before, just because the community has that ethos, has that feeling. And I know that I've slept on Brian's floor in Tokyo, I've slept in Imre's house, I've slept on your floor in Denmark, and I feel so lucky to have been able to do that, and it doesn't really happen anymore because there's lots of new players. But some of that ethos has come through. Do you still feel it, or do you miss it?
No, I still feel it, of course it was special in the old days. We were younger and everything was new, but even though I still keep coming back to the Worlds year after year, because there's a special community here, and it's really hard to describe if you haven't tried playing at the Worlds, but because it's really is a special thing, meeting people from all over the world, and it's people that maybe you see them just once a year, but you have seen them before, and you get together and you chat, and as you said, it could have been people that you've had staying in your home for some reason or another tournaments. So the general thing, I think the Worlds has a really genuine appeal to most of the players that come here.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that the big difference is when you do sit around the table, instead of flipping discs, you're now touching screens, as a general rule. Brian, I believe that you played Scrabble for a bit as well.
So I did play the competitive Scrabble.
And how did that compare?
So yeah, as Carson was saying, I think the Othello players as a group are nicer than most other games because there's no professional Othello players. You can't make a living at it. So you still have people who are very dedicated to the game and are trying really hard, but it's not like you're a professional. Whereas something like Scrabble, there are people who consider that's all they do really. They consider themselves professional players, and of course things like chess or Go or other strategy games, you can be playing for a lot of money. So it tends to be more cutthroat. People can be nastier. Whereas Othello, it's mostly you're playing because you enjoy the game, and it's a very it's a very nice community. It's the kind of thing where you can you're happy to invite someone to come and sleep on your floor before a tournament.
Okay, and one big last question to all of you. You all have children, and how did your Othello affect your children? I have children and I take them to tournaments and force them to play with me, but they seem to enjoy it, so it's okay. Do any of your children play?
So my children couldn't care less about Othello, and they don't care how I've done, except if occasionally, like in one of Carsten's Danish tournaments, the prize is a big box of chocolates, then they're interested.
Right.
Otherwise, never.
Yeah, well, my children also, I have a couple of boys, and they really haven't taken much interest in Othello, and like I'm not the best sportsman. I should have let them win a little bit more, but it's kind of not my nature. So,
but they still took advantage of joining you in the World Championships in Japan last year.
They accompanied me to Japan last year, and they thought it was pretty cool to see that somebody their own age that came a Japanese boy. And he wanted my autograph. And you should have seen my kids. Wow. Somebody comes to wants Dad's autograph? What's happening here? that was kind of
Famous.
fun. Yeah. And then all of a sudden playing Othello sort of lifted a little bit in recognition from them.
Okay. Brian?
So, and my wife is Japanese, also an Othello player. And
also playing in this tournament.
Also playing in this tournament. And my children, well, my son played the most seriously, but he was never very devoted. He's a lot of interests, music and other games and video games and things. So he's not extremely serious playing Othello, but he has played the most among my kids, and he's playing in this tournament. We played at the U.S. Nationals, and he beat me one game. So
okay.
He has improved quite a lot.
So has Yoko won the women's championship?
Yeah. So my wife Yoko Sano has won the women's world championship.
Okay, and you've won the men's championship.
And I think we're the only husband and wife
couple.
to both win. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, just again, one question to you specifically, Brian. You are the only one of us sitting here who's actually won the world championship. How did it feel the moment that you did it?
So it was, as I mentioned, I played in '81. I finished in second place, and then it took 20 years to actually win, and 20 years of a lot of effort. So it was extremely satisfying to finally win. And this is also from other games, but people say it's nice to be world champion of something. So it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you can be any game or really anything. But to be world champion, that's a special feeling.
Yes. Okay. So this is our 3 stalwarts of the World Championships. Brian Rose, Imre Leader, Carsten Feldberg, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You can leave.
This was an amazing interview you did, I think, because do you know what I think about? It is World Othello Championship have now been played over 40 years, and the tournament started in the early of the 70s, and many of the players who was in the beginning still playing competitions.
Yes.
So in this tournament this year we have players who are 74-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And the youngest is 8. So, and also some players who just play for days or some months, and those guys who played for almost 40, 30 years.
Yeah.
So this is Othello for me.
Yes. And the speed at which it's possible to get good
Yeah.
if you dedicate your time online is so low now that you can have the young players
Yeah.
competing with those who have been playing for 40 years. And yes, sometimes that's just really enjoyable to watch. The fact that people like Imre and Carsten and Brian have embraced the changes
Yeah.
and still feel passionate about the game after 40 years of playing.
So we hope the young kids who are playing in this tournament, 13 years, will continue playing in
Maybe.
30, 40 years.
Maybe we hope that one or two of them win the World Championships before
Yeah.
then. And the other thing that Imre once said to me was that despite the length of time that he's been playing, there are surprising things that happen in every tournament, especially in the World Championships. There's always something surprising.
Yes.
And I think that is fascinating in itself, that you can play that many games over that period of time and still be surprised by things that happen.
Yeah.
I
agree
think that
with-
speaks volumes about the game.
We will see this tournament. It will be interesting. And now we will present the team who will give you the live Othello TV this tournament. It is Guy Plowman here beside me, and we will ask Jeroen Everts and Emmanuel Caspard to take place here together with us. We will make a short presentation first. My name is Bengt Stentoft, and I am this Studio Othello host, and I'm also secretary for the World Othello Federation. And I have played Othello for over 30 years, but in a low level, I should say, not so high as those guys we have here and before. The game commentators for World Othello Championship 2017 will be Jeroen Everts. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
You're a student living in Stockholm. You're the one here who not have played so many years. You started 2003. But you are an experienced player, and last year you did some good results.
Yeah, I played some EGPs and I made it 2 times to the final. Unfortunately, I didn't win, but it was nice to play final.
Yeah, I remember in Copenhagen you was just some discs to beat.
Yeah, 2 discs.
Yeah, who was it you playing against?
Takashi Yamakawa.
Yeah, that's good. You won 1 game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a nice experience.
yeah, absolutely. And beside you, you have Emmanuel Caspard.
Hello.
Yeah, no, Emmanuel Caspard. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I was afraid I said wrong there. But you're a school teacher from Paris,
Hmm.
and you have played many, many years. How many years?
Around 25 years. My first tourney was in 1989.
Yeah. And you have played many World Othello Championship, and it has went well.
Yes, I was twice runner-up in the Worlds in 93 and 98.
and European champion and France champion sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Many times, maybe.
Oh,
A
just
few times.
sometimes.
And beside me here we have Guy Plowman, and you will be the live Othello TV host for those days.
Mm-hmm.
And you are also chairman for the British Othello Federation. And you have also played many years.
Yeah, I've played just about 30 years. And yeah, I was one of these 16-year-olds who came in, and the same way that Imre said, he went and looked at Brian. In my first tournaments, I kind of looked at Imre, and I understand the feeling he was talking about.
Yeah. But you have also been a world champion.
I was part of the team which won the team championship in 1996. I came third out of the British players, but fifth overall,
Okay.
and that was a good year.
And the team was you?
Me, a friend from England called Gary Edmead, and a Nottingham mathematician called Joel Feinstein.
Okay, yeah. So now will we discuss some of this World Othello Championship. And please tell me your expectation for this World Othello Championship. We will start with a team. The World Championship for teams. Japan have a very, very strong team. They are rated number 1, 2, and 3. In fact.
5 or something.
Yeah. Is it anyone who can treat Japan to win this year?
No.
No,
No.
Okay. You all agree with that? Why?
Yes. I think they have 3 players which are so much better than the rest. So even if some other guy comes in the semi-finals, then they still have to have 2 other who also do much better. So it could be possible that somebody beat the Japanese guy, but no, I don't think they will beat the whole
Okay.
team. So
No.
I think that there's a lot of teams with 2 good players, 2 competitive players with the Japanese will give them good games. They will lose more than they win, and their third player won't be as strong as
Okay.
the third player in the Japan team.
So you mean for the other teams, will be much pressure for the third player?
No, I think almost it's more pressure on the top players because they have to beat their games.
Okay.
They have to win their games against the Japanese. It's almost double points because you bring them down by 1 point, you push yourself up by 1 point. But the top 2 players in another good team both have to do really well because they know that the third player is unlikely to contribute in the same way that the third player in a Japan team will.
So you are all 3 sure that Japan will be the world champions. So we
Yes.
can talk about number 2 to 5. What do you think about those? Is it closer or is it?
yeah, the race from 2 to 5 will be much more interesting to follow, I think, because there's not one clear favorite for the second place. I think there are some teams who have 3 players which are quite good, and I think about Sweden, the Netherlands, France. They all have really good players. I think those 3 teams will fight for places 2, 3, and 4, and maybe there will come another team with 2 good players and 1 player which is a bit less. But maybe if that player surprises, they can compete with the 3 teams.
So I will ask you 3 here. I start with you, Emmanuel. Your top 4?
Top 4 teams,
Yeah.
you mean? Well, Japan. Let's say France. Netherlands. And Sweden.
Okay. Jeroen?
Japan, and then I would say France, and then Sweden, and then Netherlands.
Inge?
And I will say Japan and France and Netherlands, and I'm going to throw the UK in there just as a bit of patriotism.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So now we go into the youth players. We have 13 youth players this year in the World Othello Championship. So what can we say? I mean, 13 players. Last year it was 4.
Yeah, it's nice to have so many young players. It's really. We have old players. We already saw them, but many young players. You have the next generation.
Yeah.
It's nice.
What I thought was interesting under the pairings here was that they look so happy. I mean, they get players that they think, oh, this will be very difficult, but they look happy. It's players who have a rating for 200 or 400 points, and then they will meet a 2000 rated player, and they look very happy and having fun.
I think if you're young, you're just enthusiastic about playing, so
You don't really care about the result.
no, maybe the result, but not really about the opponent, because you just want to play.
I remember being young and or being not so good and wanting to play the best people. I think it's an experience, and if you're at the World Championships, why be at the World Championships if you don't want to play the best people? Even if you're going to get hammered, they're nice people. You get to chat to them, and the overall experience is good, even if you lose heavily. And I think that's credit to the players, really.
So, how are your thoughts about the players here? Is it anyone who will?
Sorry, I'm laughing a bit because also in the youth championship, I think we will have a clear winner, and he is also from Japan. So I don't think that will be much of a surprise.
Okay, because some people say that Akahiro Takahashi maybe can be also in the top 4
yes, could
for
be
the
possible.
tournament. Yeah. So it's a too big step from him to the rest of the players.
Yes, I would say that. I don't think he will have such a big challenge meeting the other youth players.
Yeah, I agree with Joran.
Yeah. But okay, but he will play probably if he's not playing the big semifinals.
Yes.
He will play a youth final game, and he must have an opponent. Who will that be?
I think that one would also be quite clear. I'm thinking about Felix.
And Felix is from Switzerland?
Yeah, Felix Jung. I don't know how to pronounce. He became really good really fast, and he's not yet at the level of the Japanese guy, but I think he's the closest.
Yeah.
So I think those two will play the final. And it would be fun because last year his brother was playing the youth final, so
Yeah.
they take
Keep
turns.
it in the family.
Yeah, keep it in the family.
One thing I think is great that we have Asian youth player, European, and we have youth player from Africa, Ivory Coast. I mean, the Othello world is spreading, and we really need the next generation, and the next generation only not in the top countries as Japan and Netherlands. So I mean, it's good that we have Africa here too. So I think it will be interesting for the future to see what happens. So now we go to the Women's World Othello Championship, and this year it's 20 female players. 2 of them is former World Othello Championship. It's Yoko Sano playing for USA, and Jiska Helmes from the Netherlands. What is your thought about those 2 former champions and also the other players?
I think that both of them have a good chance again. But I also think that the Japanese lady
Misa Sugarawara?
is also very good because in Japan the qualification system is very tough. So she will be good by virtue of being here. My personal thoughts are that Yoko Sano will prevail, but that's not a confident thing. And just to kind of go back to the previous conversation as well, Yoko Sano is also known as Yoko Rose and is Brian's wife.
Yeah.
I can agree that she has a good chance, but I don't think she will make it to the final this year. I think it will be the Japanese lady and Jiska Helmes.
Yeah, we have Misa Sugarawara from Japan, Jiska Helmes, Yoko Sano, and we also have 2 players from Thailand, Sharini Mitman and Pacharapon Tana, and also Shinea Lee from Korea. And they are all very close in the World Othello Federation rating list. It's not almost 100 points between number 1 and number 6.
Well, I think of course they all have chance, but I think that in this case the former world champions maybe have more chance when they come to the semis because they have experience in playing semi-finals and finals. And from what I know, when I play the final, it's much more pressure and nerves. So if you did it once before, then it's maybe easier to handle that. So I think they have an advantage there, but of course it's not impossible for the others to come to the semi or final.
So, Jeroen, who is the 4 in the semi-final?
The 4 in the semi-final. There will be Yoko Sano, the Japanese lady, I forgot her name, Misa Sugawara. Yes. And Jessica Helmes, and I think Tana.
Pacharapon-Tana.
Yeah.
Well,
You agree?
Yoko Sano, yes.
Yeah.
Iska Helms, Nisa Sugarawa, and maybe Shunari
Chanel, yeah.
from Korea.
And Guy?
I think any 4 from the 6 that you listed
Yeah.
could easily make there wouldn't be any surprise at all if any of those 6 made it to the
I mean,
semis.
we can't forget the thing that those 6 players will also play players from the real tournament. They don't only play the females or the girls. They will play, as Jessica Helmes will now play against Piaget Anchili.
Yeah.
So it depends also how they're playing against the guys. So
And I think
the pairings is kind of lotteries sometimes. Is that okay?
Well, I think we're going to talk about this a bit more tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But the way the type of tournament that this is it's called a Swiss system, and it means that everybody plays in every one of the first 13 rounds, and then there's semi-finals and final. And in those 13 rounds, you find your level.
Yeah.
So if someone's on 6 out of 8 wins, then they tend to play someone else who's on 6 out of 8 wins, irrespective of whether they're a junior, whether it's their first tournament, their 80th tournament. It doesn't matter. Whoever's on 6 out of 8 wins will end up probably playing someone else on 6 out of 8 wins. And so, although you can have some luck of the draw in the first round, it certainly pans out evenly over time, and the best people bubble to the top, and then they play each other in the later rounds.
I just think one funny fact is that we had 12 times the ladies championship, and we have 12 different winners. So maybe it's not so successful for Jessica or Yoko Sano, because
The pressure for the second, be the first lady to win it twice.
it never happened. So
No.
Good point.
maybe they could.
So maybe we get
pressure.
a 13-1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be.
But that will not happen in the World Othello Championship because we have Taminori have 7 wins, so he must play more tournaments. And Yusuke Takanashi have 5 wins.
5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
4.
4.
Okay, thank you for correcting. First, before we continue, we will say that we feel sad that Jan Song will not be with us this year because he didn't really get fair possibility to join here. He get refused for the visa invitation, so he can't be here this tournament. And he played well last year. He was runner-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a big loss. He made so much nice and interesting games last year that it will be hard to miss him.
And it is surprising that that he didn't get his visa because they were questioning what his motive was for actually coming when he was runner-up in the World Championships last year. It's a big loss for the tournament, but there is enough strong players to like still. There's loads of interest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're talking about strong players. Some people I talked with today at the pairings say that it's maybe can be so this year. It's 4. The top 4 players is all Japanese. What do you think about that, Manuel?
Yeah, it could be with Yusuke and Seiya Kurita and the young Japanese player we were talking about,
Takahashi.
Yeah, Takahashi. Yeah.
Akihiro Takahashi, and Fuku. The 4th one is Fukunaga. Yeah, we could have the 4 in the semis. The question is who will be able to take maybe 1 or 2 of the 4 places.
Yeah.
I think statistically it's unlikely I just think all of them have the ability to get into the semis, but asking all 4 of them to have a good tournament
Yeah.
together is statistically much more unlikely. Picking 4 players and saying these 4 will all do well when the rest of the field is so strong and snapping at their heels
Yeah.
that if one of them has one bad game, it means that they might miss out on the semi-final. Because do remember that in the Swiss system, they also play each other. So they will lose points against each other.
Yes, and they also have the world champion, PM
Yes.
out, and he also you can't forget about him. Last year he beat Yusuke Takanashi also, so why not do it again?
Yeah, and also Matthias Berg in last round
Yes,
won against Takanashi.
against Takanashi. Yes.
Okay, so, is it any other players you think we should flag for?
Well, I think there are certain some players who have potential. If they have 2 really good days, they maybe make it to the semifinals. I was thinking about Arthur Jung-Ye. Oh, I thought such a hard name.
Junior.
Arthur Jung-Ye. He for 2 years ago, when he was even younger, he beat both Makoto Suikuni and Takanashi in one tournament. So if he can manage to be as good the second day, he can maybe surprise and go to the semifinals. And maybe one of the Hong Kong players, they're quite new, but they show big progression. So maybe Maverick Lam or Chung Wan Lee.
Yes, we're often talking just about the top 4, the semifinals. Of course, they are here to find out who is the world champion, but it's almost 100 players. I mean, some of them know they will fight about place 90 to 100, or maybe top 80 could be good. So is it any place there you think could be interesting to follow this week?
Ask me after the first 3 rounds, because it's often the case that someone unpredictable, and that's why I won't give any names, but someone unpredictable gets 2 or 3 good wins in a row.
Yeah.
And you go, whoa, have they improved that much? Or was it luck? And then it becomes interesting. They start playing the better players, and if they beat one better player than them, they become a person to watch, even though they weren't on the watch list before the tournament. And that happens so often, you just can't predict who it is, that it can give a lot of excitement when you watch that sort of player, when they're on form.
Yeah. You have some players, I know also in Sweden we have that, who can kill the day for the top players because they play very, very well in one game and beating the best, and next game they can lose again to one of the bottom players.
Like
but
you.
Like me, yes. Yeah, well, I'm kind of that player. I can
Kind.
sometimes beat.
No, but
Okay.
he does that.
Yeah, I can win against the best player once, and
He can lose against the
Yeah.
lowest.
so I'm not strong enough to win a whole tournament, but I can destroy a day for Jeroen and the others once.
Yeah.
So we have some of them here too. So if you're unlucky and meet 2 or 3 of them, your tournament can totally be ruined.
Yes, and I think that actually the demographic of players, that middle bracket of good and can beat these people, but not quite the quality of those people, I think that is the area which has expanded over the years. That is now chock-a-block of, it's so full, just in case people don't know my English.
Chock-a-block.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. Yeah.
But it's so full of good players who are not potential winners probably, but can upset a potential winner. There are just so many of those players now.
So tomorrow we start. The live Othello show start 8:30 and the game start 9 o'clock. And you who see this, if you like it, you can see this on Facebook and YouTube. Write some comments and also use the hashtag WOC17. So,
Not 2017.
So
oh, World Othello double
No,
way.
you said red. I think
He was correcting me.
before guy is correcting you wrong. So.
Yeah. Well, you see, guys, we have fun when we're doing this. We are happy amateurs in this too. So we will say good night from us all here in Gent, and see you tomorrow.
See you
8:30.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye bye.